So, again, when we had our lunch and just hearing you now, it's clear to me that, you're very thoughtful, you're very business oriented. I know you have a business undergrad degree, but, I'm curious, I'd like sort of take me through, you bought the Thunberg book, Elephant, but at some point you started to get into, looking at programs, law firms, sort of programs to help people push along. So how did you discover that stuff, and sort of take me through your involvement in it?
So I think first what I'd say is I was a reluctant student, and it took me a while to get hold of some things in my head to realize I don't know it all. I'm not going to figure it all out, and I really need to try to learn from some others about how to manage things, about how to grow the firm, and to help me accomplish the goals. And so, I'd learned some things just from the School of Hard Knocks, right? I mean, we all go through some of that, but then I sought out and connected with some coaching groups and programs, and each has helped me, along the way. Probably one of the first things I got involved with was Ben Glass's Great Legal Marketing. He's a PI lawyer, disability lawyer up in Virginia that runs this organization, Great Legal Marketing, that really helped with some of the practical business side of the law practice, especially with marketing, some management things, and that helped. And I was active in that for a few years. And I got some good stuff out of that. Later on, I still needed more, I think, kind of beyond marketing and into more of the technical management and operations and systems and different things like that. And so I joined an Atticus coaching group, was involved with that for several years, and that was very helpful to me.
Welcome to the Founding Partner Podcast. Join your host, Jonathan Hawkins, as we explore the fascinating stories of successful law firm founders. We'll uncover their beginnings, triumph over challenges, and practice growth. Whether you aspire to launch your own firm, have an entrepreneurial spirit, or are just curious about the legal business, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Welcome to Founding Partner Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Hawkins, and this is a podcast where I get to interview law firm founders and hear about their journeys and the lessons they've learned along the way. And today I'm excited to welcome Joel Beck to the program. He is a trust and estates lawyer here in Georgia. He's got the Beck firm, the Beck Law Firm, I should say. But he's got an interesting story and background that's going to be sort of fun to explore. So, Joel, I guess, first of all, welcome to the program. And why don't you, what did I leave out? Tell us about your firm and sort of what you do and where you are, how many folks you got, that sort of thing.
Well, hey, first, thanks for having me on, Jonathan. You got a good podcast. I listen to it quite often, and I'm happy to be here. I am Joel Beck. I'm an estate planning and probate attorney. Our office is in Lawrenceville, Georgia, Gwinnett County. That's the northeast suburbs of Atlanta. We operate our business under the brand name of Peach State Wills and Trust, and we're here in Lawrenceville. We've got 2 lawyers and 2 support staff, and we've got an outsourced team of marketing folks that support us in that regard. And we do nothing now but estate planning and business planning type work and some uncontested probate.
So, Joel, we had lunch, a while back, and the thing that struck me is that you sound more like a business person than a lawyer, which is always very interesting to me. So, how do you view yourself nowadays? Lawyer, business person, somewhere in between?
All the above on a good day. None on a bad day, I guess. It just depends. I mean, right, when you're running a firm, you can't just be a lawyer. You've got to wear the business hat, right? And so you've got to learn, I think, over time to handle all of those things to keep everything humming along and moving, and to grow and reach the goals that you set for yourself.
So another thing that people that know me and listen to me know, I do like a good trade name. So Peach State Wills and Trust. How long have you been using that, and sort of what pushed you to move in that direction?
We've been using it a few years, and went through a process, had a great IP lawyer take that, got it registered for us with the USPTO. And so we got the little Circle R thing, all that good stuff. But we used it for a few years. And the reason why is I was thinking more long-term, right? And building a business to grow, and one that really is not dependent on me, right? And when we're operating as the Beck Law Firm, I'm kind of integral to that, right? But if we're operating as Peach State Wills and Trust, it's really not tied to me necessarily. So I was looking at that as a way to further differentiate ourselves. The name tells you what we do, right? We do wills and trust, right? But then second, also gear this up so that we can grow. And back then I was thinking about a potential exit strategy one day down the road and just thought, hey, that might be of benefit too.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that at least leaves open the option and maybe gives some more flexibility. It doesn't guarantee you're going to be able to do it, So a lot of people ask, well, what if I don't ever want to sell? I say, well, it's still good to have the option. Mm-hmm. The other piece that I see a lot of is, I do a lot of law firm breakups. And if you don't really have people's names in the firm name, then you don't have to worry about changing it. If anything changes, a new partner comes, somebody leaves, all this stuff. And, I've talked to a lot of, I guess, more consumer-facing firms that have started to use trade names, and it's not really for succession planning or exit planning or anything like that reasons. It's more of Google juice. And so I don't know did that play any part in it? You said you put, wills and trusts in there, or is that just sort of an afterthought for you?
Yeah, that wasn't really a determining factor. If it helps, it helps. That's cool. But that really wasn't factored into our decision-making process there.
All right, so let's take a step back. So the law for you is a second career. So take me back. What were you doing before, and how did you end up in the law?
Yeah, so I'll try to make this short. I went to college, did my undergrad at Georgia Southern, got a business degree, and immediately got out and went to the police academy and worked in law enforcement. That's what I always wanted to do as I was a little kid. So did that. Enjoyed doing that, learned a lot about life, learned a lot about some other things, but then also realized this wasn't going to be a long-term play in terms of, the rest of my life, the rest of the career, and started exploring some options. So it led to a couple of other positions kind of related to law enforcement, but in the private sector. And then I wound up going to work for NASD, which is now known as FINRA, the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. And they regulate securities broker-dealer firms as well as financial advisors and regulate the NASDAQ stock market. And I went over there as an investigator. And while I was there working for the regulatory agency, took advantage of some benefits they had, one of which was an education benefit. And they'd pay so much a year, if you wanted to go back to school and do something to further your education, if it could somehow relate to, what the organization did. So I went to law school at night after seeing what our attorneys in our office there were doing. And I kind of thought, hey, I think I could do that too. And it looks like a pretty good gig. And I'd already had several people tell me over the years, well, you go to law school, get a law degree, you can do a lot of stuff. And so I took advantage of that tuition benefit and went to law school at night. While I was in school, they made me a paralegal, moved me over to the enforcement department, and continued to work there. Finished up school, passed the bar. They made me an attorney. I stayed there another 6 years and worked as an enforcement attorney in the Atlanta office. And then that led me to leave in 2007 and start my own firm as I was looking for further, personal growth and development and happiness, and started the firm back then and still here today.
I tell any person interested in law school, I tell them, whoever gives you the most money. That tuition benefit, that's awesome because, again, I'm always one for keeping your options open or having optionality. And if you have a gigantic albatross of law school debt hanging around your neck, it sort of limits the things you can do, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't have that experience personally because that was a great benefit for me. But yeah, I would be concerned about, recommending law school to somebody in terms of the debt you take on and all of that. You got to be careful about that.
Okay. So you worked for, I'll call it FINRA, but basically the NASD, whatever it's called, for a good number of years as a non-lawyer, then another 6 years as a lawyer.
Yeah.
So tell me about what was the spark? What pushed you to say, hey, let me go start something? Because, you work for an organization long enough, I can see you getting comfortable, right? Or a person getting comfortable. So what pushed you to start?
So I was put into this program that was a leadership development program in the company, to raise up the next group of leaders and get you exposed to different parts of the organization, different departments, and develop relationships and things like that. And it was a neat program. I was glad I was able to do that. But as part of that program, they sent me to the Center for Creative Leadership. up in Greensboro, North Carolina for a week to go through CCL's leadership development program. And when you do that, when you get ready to go, they subject you to a host or a battery of different tests and assessments, a 360-degree assessment where, your peers and your superiors and your subordinates are assessing you on different things relating to your job performance and, things like that. A battery of personality traits or personality tests and different things, these assessments. And so you go up there and you go through this program at CCL. It was a great program. And then they pair you with an executive coach to kind of develop, okay, what's the action plan for your professional growth kind of going forward? And I guess what I can summarize is that opportunity, that week, and all of that assessment and that stuff, it was somewhat eye-opening. It was confidence building, but it was also an interesting realization as I left there and started working with this coach to kind of develop a plan for career growth. I realized that for me to really continue to grow and develop professionally, I needed to go somewhere else. And so I had what I thought was an awkward conversation with this executive coach I'm working with. We're on the phone one day talking, and he asked me what I'm thinking about. And I said, well, I think I've got kind of an ethical quandary here. He said, what do you mean? And I said, well, I'm supposed to work. My company is paying you to work with me to develop me and help me grow, personally and professionally here in my career. But I'm getting the sense that for me to really do that, I need to leave and go do something else. And he stopped me and said, this happens all the time. Don't worry about it. And so I was kind of shocked with that. But anyway, that kind of put the spark in things. And I worked with just, over a little bit of time to kind of figure out what I wanted to do and decided, well, I got the law degree. I'm a lawyer. I'm going to go out and start my own firm. And, so back in then, this is 2006, 2007, right? And the internet wasn't as progressed as it is today. And so, I'm reading books by Jay Foonberg and, Carolyn Elephant had the My Shingle thing going on and providing advice and guidance. And I'm soaking up things like that. And it just led where I, started an LLC, built out a plan and then went in, and my boss was in New Orleans. And so picked up the phone one morning, called, dropped the news and said, I'll work a month. And I did. And then the firm was born.
It's to people nowadays, it's hard to imagine that there really were not very many resources back then. You had the Foonberg Bible, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And, Elephant had her thing. There were a couple others maybe, but it was hard. I mean, there just wasn't, and internet was still fairly young back then too. I mean,
right.
Internet really started gearing up in late 90s maybe. And so there's wasn't much out there. So, people just don't remember that so much, the younger folks. And so I want to get to some of that. But so this coach you had there that they provided you, is that the first time you sort of had worked with, I'll call it a business coach?
It was.
Career coach.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we'll get to this a little later. I know that since then you've been part of numerous programs and coaching and all this. So I do want to sort of go through that and about your experience with that. So, but before we get there, so you decide to go out, you give it a shot. So so obviously you're not taking clients with you because you were working.
Yeah.
So, what'd you do? How did you tell people what you did? Well, first of all, what did you say you were doing? Was it FINRA type stuff or?
Yeah.
What did you come out in terms of that?
You're right. I went from the enforcement department of the regulatory agency to private sector and private practice. So I didn't take a single client. I didn't have anything. Went from that nice paycheck every 2 weeks to the eat what you kill system. And that was an interesting experience. But I started off, I knew I was going to really just kind of flip sides of the table, right? Instead of being an investigating and prosecuting cases against broker dealers and financial advisors, I'd go to the defense, right? Do some compliance counseling and regulatory defense work and the like. But I knew that sometimes that's cyclical. And of course, it's more of a national scope of practice. It's more federal rules, uniform rules, as opposed to state specific. But I wanted to kind of round out some other stuff. And so I thought back to some things that I enjoyed in law school and had kind of dealt with just personally previously. So I decided I'm going to add a couple of practice areas to that. I'm going to do some estate planning and then some general small business law, LLC and corporation formations and contracts and kind of some small transactional stuff. So those were really the three areas. We had this, financial advisor, broker dealer, investment advisor work, estate planning, and then business law. And so when I left the regulator, and it was really the end of July 2007, and the website went live. Hey, world, here's the three things I'm doing. Let me know how I can help. And back then you'd send out card stock notices. Hey, I've opened a firm. Here's my contact information. Kind of the tombstone notices, things like that. Reaching out, trying to do some networking, beat the streets, let people know, hey, I'm out here. What can I do? And go from there.
So I imagine, maybe I'm wrong, but you're doing FINRA broker dealer style work. July 2007 is when you start, and then within a couple years, the world ends. Did you just get a flood of cases? I mean, you're almost perfectly positioned at that time when the great financial crisis hit.
Yeah, well, what I'll tell you, Jonathan, is the work came. We didn't go hungry. There was no bankruptcy filing. Business was coming, and the financial advisor type securities, compliance work was my main practice area. That was the main driver, the main source of revenue, biggest practice area. There is a lag time. So on the regulatory stuff, right, things have to blow up first. Then the regulators find about it, and then there's a forever long investigation and stuff happens. So, if the stock market has the correction or the crash, it's still going to take a while for that stuff to trickle through the system on a regulatory side. But yeah, there was work, and I was, I think reasonably successful in what we did in terms of, representing folks and helping guide them through those various regulatory issues.
Okay, so now you focus on wills and trust and probate.
Yeah.
Then you did three different things at least. So take me through the transition, sort of what the thought process of, hey, I'm going to, sort of phase out of the FINRA stuff and just really focus on this. So number one, sort of take me through the thought process, and then take me through, the mechanics. How did that work? How do you just say, hey, everybody, I'm not taking those cases anymore? How do you wind them down? Do you refer them out? Take me through that.
Well, it was a slow process initially. I was doing a few different things, had the broker-dealer, investment advisor, regulation and compliance, the estate planning, some general small business stuff. And over time, I realized what I was doing, it was really all dependent on me. And I wanted to move more towards a model of a firm where the firm could function more and more without me. Maybe I could not be there and revenue is happening, people are doing work, taking care of things. And it took a while. And there were some people that told me along the way, niche down, but I was a slow learner. But I realized, okay, maybe these folks are right. I do need to niche down in practice to downsize what we were doing to be able to then grow in the way that I wanted to grow. So I made the decision to make estate planning the primary practice area, to cease taking on the other work, the financial advisor related work. And, that was a big decision because that was like the largest practice area. It generated more revenue than all of the other work combined. And so I did that over time. It wasn't something I could just switch and be done with that. And some of those cases, they drag on for a while. It takes a while. Some of those cases took, a few years to wind down. The last open one was just closed earlier this year. But I stopped taking on new work, a couple of years ago, and then, everything finally finished out. And so now our practice focuses only on estate planning and some uncontested probate. We do handle some ancillary business work, but it's really in the context of estate and business planning for our estate planning clients because it ties into their estate planning, but that's it. And if it's not in our wheelhouse there, it's not something we're bringing in.
So let me ask you, there are people out there probably thinking about either switching practice areas or phasing one out and really going towards another. Is there any advice that you would give? And I mean, fast advice. So, I guess part of this, for example, is you probably changed your website. So you took FINRA off or whatever. Then people call you to say, hey, I got a case. And you've got to have the backbone to say, no, I'm not taking it. So what kind of advice would you give to somebody out there that's maybe thinking about making that transition?
Yeah, so you talk about the website. We'd actually started a different website, Peach State Wills, and we're starting with that branding, because the way you market to one practice area, the consumer of that can be very different than the way you market to the consumer of another practice area. And so that was something that I picked up on and started taking action on. But I think if somebody's thinking about making a switch, I think you've really got to be honest with yourself and ask a few questions. First, why? Is there a good reason? Why do you want to do this? And it may be because you think the financial prospects are better there, cases are going to be easier to get. It may just be you think you'll like your job better. You'll get up and be happy about going to work, and that's certainly important. But I think you've got to have a good enough reason why, to make that switch. But I think you've also got to build out a plan where you can make it work. This wasn't something we could pull off overnight, because this was the largest practice area. It was the largest pot of revenue each year historically since the firm opened. And so we walked into this with caution, but with, definitely a goal of where I wanted to be and come out. And that helped.
I think that's so important. You didn't burn the boats, so to speak. It was a measured plan to transition. And so anybody out there thinking about it, maybe you have a nest egg big enough and you can do that. But if you don't and you need the cash flow, then, you got to take it step by step. So that's important. So, again, when we had our lunch and just hearing you now, it's clear to me that, you're very thoughtful, you're very business oriented. I know you have a business undergrad degree, but, I'm curious, I know, but I'd like sort of take me through. You bought the Thunberg book, Elephant, but at some point you started to get into, looking at programs, law firms, sort of programs to help people push along. So how did you discover that stuff, and sort of take me through your involvement in it?
So I think first what I'd say is I was a reluctant student, and it took me a while to get hold of some things in my head to realize I don't know it all. I'm not going to figure it all out, and I really need to try to learn from some others about how to manage things, about how to grow the firm, and to help me accomplish the goals. And so, I'd learned some things just from the School of Hard Knocks, right? We all go through some of that. But then I sought out and connected with some coaching groups and programs, and each has helped me, along the way. Probably one of the first things I got involved with was Ben Glass's Great Legal Marketing. He's a PI lawyer, disability lawyer up in Virginia, but runs this organization, Great Legal Marketing, that really helped with some of the practical business side of the law practice, especially with marketing, some management things, and that helped. And I was active in that for a few years. And I got some good stuff out of that. Later on, I still needed more, I think, kind of beyond marketing and into more of the technical management and operations and systems and different things like that. And so I joined an Atticus coaching group, was involved with that for several years. And that was very helpful to me. I had a lot of personal and professional growth there. And during this time period, I participated in some kind of, informal mastermind groups that people had put together. We had some different estate planning lawyers in different parts of the country, and we'd, connect for an hour or two once a month via Zoom and just brainstorm things. What's working for you? What's not? What do you need help with? And everybody kind of masterminds and helps each other, and did that. And then more recently, I've got involved with Vertex League. That's run by Tracy and Andrew Zimmer up in Pennsylvania. Tracy's an estate planning lawyer there, and Andrew is an engineer by education and experience. And with his engineering background and mindset, they've really put together some good stuff in regards to engineering a law firm, with regards to systems and processes and management. And it's been good stuff, and I'm involved with them. We just spent about 2.5 days last week up in Pittsburgh, meeting with some other folks and having mastermind sessions and kind of some talks on different topics. And, I've got a list of things here that I've got to implement and do, over the next quarter to continue moving forward to some goals I've got. So it was good stuff.
Yeah, I saw some of those posts about that, the Vertex League meeting, so I was interested about that. And coincidentally, Ben Glass, I was at his summit last week.
Okay,
And
yeah.
it was the 20th anniversary of his. So he's been doing it for quite a while. But
Yeah.
So I have been in groups like that, and I get a ton out of them. You said you have a list of things. One problem that I've encountered, and I'd like to hear your view on it, is you go to these things and you get so much value, you get so many ideas. The list just goes, long list, and then you get back and you're like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this, and then sometimes I'm running in circles because I'm trying to do everything. What's been your experience, and then maybe what's your advice to somebody out there that's got that long list of wanna-dos? How do you tackle them?
Yeah, it is a challenge no matter what, right? And I've had success and I've had catastrophic failure with that. And it might be one week after the other. But what I have found to be quite helpful is actually blocking out time on the calendar each week and being committed to that. Nobody else can schedule an appointment there. I'm not going to work on a case. I'm not going to do something else. I'm going to honor that time slot to really be able to spend some time to work on the business instead of working in the business. And that helps. Without setting aside some time, it's just one of those things. I'm going to get around to it when, and we never have the time to do that. What I found, we just have to be intentional, blocking out time, honoring that commitment, and keeping it.
Real quick, if you haven't gotten a copy yet, please check out my book, The Law Firm Life Cycle. It's written for law firm owners and those who plan to be owners. In the book, I discuss various issues that come up as a law firm progresses through the stages of its growth, from just before starting a firm to when it comes to an end. The Law Firm Life Cycle is available on Amazon. Now back to the show. So you've been involved with a number of different organizations and coaches and whatnot over the years. What are your thoughts? Any advice to folks out there that maybe have not gone down that path yet? Sort of, should they do it? What should they look for? How do you choose? Because there are a lot of programs out there now.
Yeah.
Any advice on that?
Should you do it? It depends on what you want. I think you've got to get a little bit of clarity in your mind about what do you want to do. If it's your law firm, what's your purpose in having it? What do you want out of life? What do you want out of the business? And once you really start honestly thinking about that and thinking about where you want to be, I think then you can look at, okay, well, where are the areas I really need help to make this live out, and then work to find some resources that can be quite good for you. There's a lot, several different coaches or groups out there. I think a lot of them have some commonalities, some similarities, but they're also different in their approaches. And it may be, if you've got somebody that you're connected with or could get connected with who is kind of, it appears they're running a practice like you want to, right? They've got the success you want to, ask them, what are they doing? Who are they working with? Who are they talking to? And get some other feedback, and that can help you maybe narrow down what resource might be, good for you. Because I think all of the different groups or organizations, bring some different things forward.
Yeah, I think everything you said there, dead on. Number one, you got to know what you want. I think you got to start with that always. And I do think, a lot of these groups offer similar things, but they all have a different personality. You got to find the one that sort of fits you at the time you need it. That's the other thing. You can outgrow these things too. So you may need to find another.
Yeah.
So let's get back to your firm. So another thing that I want to talk about is, so your son is an attorney and he works with you now. He did not always work with you. So tell me about that. How did that sort of come about? What was he doing before, and how did you guys come together?
Yeah, so, we came together just by the father-son relationship a long time ago, but he went off to UGA. He got a business degree, studied actuarial science, and he decided on his own that he wanted to go to law school and be an attorney. And that wasn't something that I'd really stressed to either of my children or encouraged them. I just was encouraging them to find something that they thought they'd like doing and find where they could use their skills and abilities and talents and passions. But Zach decided he wanted to go to law school, and so he did. And while he was at school, he was clerking between 2L and 3L for a respected commercial litigation firm in Atlanta. And they asked him to stay on part-time during his 3L year, and he did. And then they offered him a position. And so, he clerked while he was studying for the bar and then waiting, the 3 months for the results or whatever. And then, got sworn in and became an attorney. And he really enjoyed what they were doing, I think, when he was clerking. Once he became the attorney and the long hours set in and some of the additional duties that come on board and all of that, right, he kind of changed his mind and realized, I'm really not, I guess, self-satisfied with this. He's working a good firm, good people, but he just wasn't getting the fulfillment that I think he wanted. And I think, and you'd have to ask him, but I think he kind of thought back to me and said, my dad, he seems to like his job. He seems to like what he does. Maybe there's something to that. And so he came to talk to me, and we were having a conversation, and he told me, I'm really not happy with what I'm doing with the area of the law. And I think I'd want to do something else. Talk to me about what you do and why do you like it and what do you get out of it? And so that led to a series of many conversations. And then those conversations shifted to, what about him coming to work for me? I was already planning on hiring an associate within the next year anyway. And so I was open to this idea because I needed some help. I needed another lawyer here. But it then turned from the, okay, I think you can do this. You can learn this practice area. And he had worked for me for a summer or two while in high school and already, knew a little bit about what we were doing here. But, I knew he could do it. Then we had to move from the, okay, what is this going to do to the father-son relationship, right? Because that can be challenging sometimes, right? And I wanted to ensure, and I think, he probably would agree that, a workplace relationship doesn't damage a family relationship. So we had some serious conversations about that. And, if you're going to be an employee here, you're going to be an employee and you're going to be held accountable. And just because your last name, is spelled exactly like mine doesn't mean you get a pass, right? And I'm going to hold you accountable and just like any other employee. And, you're going to be expected to work and do good work and put the time in. And there's no perks, for being the son in terms of, not carrying your weight and doing what you're supposed to. And it also means that you've got to respect it when I'm coming in as the supervisor, to talk to you about stuff. That's kind of a little bit of a different situation. I'm still your dad. I'm always going to love you, right? I'm always going to be there for you, be your biggest cheerleader and support you. But if you're working for me, we got to deal with that part of the relationship too. Can we handle that? And so we had some really good conversations and considered that. And I think we were both confident, yeah, I think we can make this work. So, he made the move, said goodbye to his other firm, came on over here. We spent a lot of time doing some education and training and getting him ready to, handle things. And it's been really cool. It's been a good result, good outcome. It's as a dad, you're just kind of proud of that, right? I'm proud of both my kids, my son and my daughter, Anna, for a lot of different reasons, but it is neat to, practice law with a child. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I can imagine. I've got 3 kids, and some days I'm like, I don't know if it'd work. I guess 2 of them are teenagers now. The other one is past that, but there was a time where it would not have worked when she was a teenager. My current ones have not gotten there yet, but yeah, I think that would be pretty cool. And it sounds like you guys have made it work and it's really sort of settled in. How long has he been there?
Why do you ask me that?
you
3 years, maybe.
Cool.
I'm going to say 3 years, maybe 3.5, maybe it's 4. I don't know.
That's cool. Well, I'm glad that you've got to experience that and then it's working out. So that's really cool. Some people, I think, believe it might be important for them, for their child to go work somewhere else first before they come back. And he did that, but it sounds like this was almost not by design, but by accident that this sort of happened. But I guess it was good he did that.
Yeah, I think so.
So another thing that, as I was getting ready for this episode, that I came across, maybe on your website, that you play drums. Is that right?
Yeah. Started in 6th grade, long time ago.
All right. Tell me about that. So I don't even see it, but I got a little drum set down there
Oh, okay.
behind me. So
Okay.
yeah, I grew up playing the drums too. I don't get to play so much anymore, but yeah. So
Yeah, so I started in sixth grade, in the middle school band and stuff, and played, was in drumline in high school, marching band, concert band, all that stuff. Played set for some of the different, like theater performances at school. And I was in a band down in college and did some stuff down there in Statesboro for a while. And then later on in life, I wound up playing drums at our church, I think for 10 or 11 years. And now I've just got my drum set up in the bonus room upstairs. I've got one of the kind of the sound shields around it and covered up. And I just go up there and play. And I call it percussive therapy sometimes. And percussive therapy can be a great outlet after some days, at the office. So I enjoy that. Still keep up with that.
that's great. I don't keep up with it so much anymore. I go through phases. There was a sort of around COVID time, I was playing a lot, a couple
Yeah.
hours a day.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
not so much anymore. I always found, God bless my parents for getting me that drum
No
set
doubt.
way
I
back
know.
when, because the practice is always at your house.
Yeah.
And it's loud. It's loud.
And
My
even if there's
sisters did-
nobody else, if just the drums are there, I mean,
Yeah.
there was no plexiglass enclosure and carpeted roof and stuff like that back then. It was Christmas of the sixth grade year that drum set came in to the house. So yeah.
I always joke with my sister that I'm going to get her son a drum set for Christmas. Just, but yeah, that's cool, man. I'm glad you're still playing. I dream of the day that I'll start playing a little bit more again. I just too much going on these days, but that's good. You're still doing it.
It's hard to find time, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's just good to take the sticks and beat on stuff for a while. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So let's get back to the firm. So another question I like to hear from folks as their firms evolve, and that's sort of the change of the owner's role and the founder's role. So
Okay.
when you start the thing, you're doing everything. You're doing, the legal work for sure, but you're buying the supplies. You're doing everything, and then over time these things sort of change. And I'm curious where you are right now in that sort of timeline. What kind of how's your day or your week set up in terms of what you spend your time on?
So it's a mix. I'm still practicing law. I'm still meeting with clients and engaged in providing legal services, right? So I'm still functioning as a lawyer, but I'm also the owner. So I'm still functioning in that capacity and as kind of the manager and reviewing, work when it's going out and helping design strategies for different cases and managing staff, overseeing the marketing, making sure payroll gets out, the bookkeepers handling stuff, all that stuff. So it's definitely a mix. I'm not at a point where, there is an awful lot of time or the majority of my time that's not focused on legal work. I'd say there's probably a pretty good division. As we continue to grow, and add on some additional legal capacity, more of my time will be focused on the non-legal work, right? But where we are now with two lawyers, I'm definitely still involved in practicing law and hands-on in providing services.
So you mentioned the marketing. That's another thing that I'm always very interested in. How do you market your practice? And really, how did you learn to market your practice? There are a lot of lawyers out there that start their firm and they've never had to market. They don't really know how to market. So how did you learn how to do it, and what works for you? You don't have to give us the secret sauce, but
Yeah. So I think I learned because I had to, right? And I learned by trial and error. I've done some things and had success. I've done some things and had catastrophic failure. So it's a mixed bag. But, we get our business from, word of mouth. So we've got clients that we've helped, and then they come back to us for additional work, or they send other people to us. We get referrals from other professionals, be it other lawyers who don't do what we do, or financial advisors or CPAs or other types of professionals. We're just found naturally on Google, and other search engines because of our website and how that's, optimized and the information we put out there. We've got an awful lot of videos out on YouTube and on our YouTube channel, and we get calls pretty regularly that, hey, found you on YouTube, saw some videos. I knew I had to call you, knew I had to work with you. So we do that. Social media, not so much. I mean, we've got a presence, but I can't really tie, ROI to social media presence. But I think it's just helpful to continue to be known. So that's probably it. And we've got, a team of people that we work with that help us with our marketing and help keep us on track and put things together and maintain and optimize the site. We do use some paid search, and they handle that, whatever voodoo that is, they take care of and all of that. And when the phone's ringing and business is coming in, I'm happy.
So let's dig into the video piece.
Yeah.
So are these old videos? Are you still updating, adding new videos? And what's your process? And then the last thing is, was it hard to start doing videos?
So I started this a long time ago, and most of the videos were tied, to some financial advisor type matter, regulatory or compliance type stuff, tips, tricks, etc. Is it hard to start? No, it's incredibly easy, and it's even easier today. Back then, I had to invest in a digital camera, a digital video camera, but of course now, the iPhone has, a better camera than any of those standalone cameras I ever bought back then. And so you get that, a tripod and a mic and a good light in front of you, and you just talk and you answer questions that your, what I call avatar client, the client that you'd like to work with, what questions do they have? And so just take a question at a time and make a video out of it, 3 to 5 minutes, maybe some 60 seconds or less, and put those up and put them on YouTube and put them on your website and put them on social media and all of that. And so we still do it. I was just talking to the marketing team today before I hopped on this with you, and they were encouraging me to make some more videos, but it's a matter of time. Sometimes that's not the priority, but we've got a list of videos to go make. So we're still doing it, just not as often as the marketing team would like. But in terms of what we do, we film the video, I send it to the marketing folks, they edit it, put on graphics and all of that, upload it to the YouTube channel, and then push it out, on social media and other stuff and all of that, tie it to blog posts on our page and things like that. Now, all of that stuff is things I used to do when, I had more time and didn't have as much work and was starting out. But now, we've got some additional folks that are really good at that, and they take care of that and frees me up to do some other things.
I'll tell you, doing some videos has been on my list for a long time, and it's just always seems to fall to the bottom. But as I've been thinking of what I'm going to do, I usually pick one new sort of marketing initiative each year, and sort of go all in. And video and the YouTube channel is one of the things I'm heavily considering. And then once I decide, then I just commit all in. So
since you don't do what I do, right? Since you have a totally different practice area, I would strongly recommend video. It's not a shiny new object to chase. It's tried and true. YouTube is the second most searched search engine. If you're not there, you're missing out. Now, for those that do estate planning and the like in Georgia, I'd probably say video is a waste of time. Don't do anything.
It's the worst thing. Yes, exactly.
It's a time suck. You'll get nothing out of it. But, with what you do, helping lawyers, it's going to be, a good thing for you. So I definitely push it.
Exactly. So shifting back to your firm, and, you've been at this for a while. You've seen a lot of things. For those out there that are maybe early in their firm or thinking about starting a firm, any advice that you give them, any things that, that they should be thinking about early on?
Yeah, I would say first off, quickly get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And what I mean by that, Jonathan, is, when we go to law school, we spend a lot of time focusing on risk, right? And identifying risk and identifying all the ways this thing can blow up for our client, whatever it is, right? And how do we deal with that? How do we manage and mitigate against that? And I think it can work to make us very timid or afraid, have some fear of taking risk. And that was definitely a mindset problem for me early on. And I wish that would have been something I would have realized and tackled sooner, right? So, but somebody starting out, I'd say, get comfortable being uncomfortable. Go ahead and take the risk. I mean, make it a calculated risk, right? But do that. I would then say surround yourself with smart people and learn from them. Don't try to learn everything on your own and take the time to do that. Connect with folks who've been there and done that and have some expertise and are going to be willing to share and help you. And then I think the third thing I'd say is sometimes less is more. For me, and people talked about this, over the years. It just took me a while to learn about it because I was like, oh, my practice is different, right? Whatever, but sometimes less is more. And so niching down or, scaling down so you can then scale up can often make things easier. So those would probably be the 3 tips I'd share.
I agree with all 3 of those. Those are really good piece of advice. So you mentioned earlier sort of starting with vision. I'm curious, sitting here today, what's your vision looking forward the next 10, 15, 20 years for your firm?
I've got plans for a second and maybe a third office location to allow us to increase capacity so that we continue growing our estate planning practice and serving more families and helping them plan for the what if moments in life and be prepared for those things when something happens. But, that's going to involve growing our team, strengthening our systems, our procedures, and of course, continuing to do excellent work, for our clients. Finding the location has been the challenge. I'm geared up and ready to go with this second spot for this community that I want to be in. And we've had just a terrible time over the last 15 months trying to identify some space that would be suitable. So that's a challenge. But that's the vision, to continue to grow, to be able to serve more families and to help them and have a firm that helps, serve our team as well, look after us and take great care of our clients and be a good citizen in the community.
Well, that's cool. And so I was listening to a podcast maybe this morning. It's a business podcast, and they were talking about how problems, so your problem of finding a location, they're like, you should be happy when you encounter the problems, because if you solve those, that means you're helping people and you're making money. So you should welcome the problems, right? So, and because you'll figure it out. And if you have the problem, that means a lot of other people have the problem. You have to be the first one to figure it out. So So that's awesome.
Yeah.
You had something to add there?
No, I agree.
So this is a question. So if you were not running a law firm, what do you think you'd be doing?
I don't know if I'd be good enough, but there's probably some artists I'd love to go play drums for, right? But otherwise, I'd be working or volunteering in some type of situation or role where I'm really encouraging others. And I don't know exactly what that would be or what it would look like, but it would involve kind of encouraging and supporting other folks to, be able to encourage them to just live a happy, healthy, productive life and make the best out of it.
Sounds like you got coaching in your future, maybe, of some sort.
Who knows?
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Well, Joel, man, this has been fun. Thank you for coming on. Again, when we had that lunch a while back, I really was struck with just how thoughtful you are about the business of law, and that jumps out to me. It really does. So I said, man, I got to get Joel on here and talk some more about this. So thanks for coming on. So for people out there that want to get in touch with you, maybe have some questions, want to follow up, what's the best way for them to find you?
PeachStateWills.com. Just go to PeachStateWills.com. You find our contact info, phone number, mailing address. You can send us an email right through the website. I hate email. I'm trying to get better at managing that. One of the ways I'm managing that is not give that email address out anymore. But if you can go to PeachStateWills.com, you can get a message to me.
Email, man. Every day I'm like, what am I doing in this thing? So I got to figure that out. It is the bane of all of our existence.
It is, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Joel, man, thanks again. I appreciate coming on.
You bet. Thanks so much. I appreciate the opportunity. Always good to connect.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Founding Partner Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts to stay up to date on the latest episodes. You can also connect with Jonathan on LinkedIn and check out the show notes with links to resources mentioned throughout our discussion by visiting www.lawfirmgc.com. We'll see you next time for more origin stories and insights from successful law firm founders.